A 52-year-old man walked into my clinic 6 months ago. He looked healthy, tanned, fit, no obvious symptoms. But his latest calcium scan told a different story. 70% blockage in his left anterior descending artery. His cardiologist had already scheduled an angiogram and was talking about a stent. He came to me as a second opinion, desperate for another way. I remember the fear in his eyes. He said, "Dr. Chen, I've eaten well my entire life. I run 3 times a week. How could this happen?" That question is exactly why I do what I do. Because the standard advice, eat less fat, exercise more, take a statin, isn't enough. And sometimes it's actually wrong. What if I told you that within 6 months, without a single surgical procedure, that 70% blockage dropped to under 30%? What if the solution was something you probably grew up eating but have been told to avoid? I'm Dr. Vivian Chen, a functional nutritionist and longevity specialist trained at UCLA. I've spent the last 15 years helping people reverse the very conditions that conventional medicine says are irreversible. And today, I'm going to show you how ancient grains, yes, carbs, became the single most powerful tool in reversing arterial plaque for my 52-year-old patient. But first, I need to explain why your arteries get blocked in the first place. And it's not what you think. Most people believe heart disease is about cholesterol. Eat too much saturated fat, cholesterol builds up, blocks the pipe. Simple. Wrong. If that were the whole story, half the marathon runners eating bacon every day would be dead. And the 80-year-old vegan who just had a heart attack wouldn't exist. The real problem is inflammation. Your artery walls are not passive pipes. They're dynamic, living tissue. When chronic inflammation damages the endothelium, that thin inner lining, your body's repair response sends in cholesterol as a bandage. But if the inflammation never stops, that bandage grows. It hardens, it calcifies, and over decades, it becomes a blockage. So the question isn't, how do I lower cholesterol? The question is, what is causing the inflammation that makes cholesterol stick? For my patient, the answer wasn't red meat or eggs. It was the absence of something his ancestors ate every single day. When I looked at his diet diary, I saw a pattern. He avoided carbs like the plague. No bread, no pasta, no rice. He thought he was protecting his heart, but by eliminating whole grains, he had inadvertently removed the most powerful anti-inflammatory, plaque-reversing foods on the planet. Ancient grains, oats, barley, quinoa, amaranth, teff, millet, buckwheat. These are not the refined white flour bombs that spike your blood sugar. These are complex packages of fiber, polyphenols, and minerals that directly fight the root cause of arterial disease. Let me show you the mechanism because this is where the magic happens. The first thing ancient grains do is feed your gut microbiome. When you eat beta-glucan, a soluble fiber abundant in oats and barley, your gut bacteria ferment it into short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. Butyrate is the primary fuel for your colon cells. But more importantly, it enters your bloodstream and directly lowers systemic inflammation. One study from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that participants who ate 3 grams of beta-glucan daily for 6 weeks reduced their C-reactive protein, a marker of arterial inflammation, by nearly 25%. That's the equivalent of taking a low-dose anti-inflammatory drug without the side effects. But that's just the beginning. Second, these grains are packed with polyphenols. Avenanthramides, unique to oats, are powerful antioxidants that prevent LDL cholesterol from oxidizing. Oxidized LDL is the form that actually gets stuck in artery walls. Unoxidized LDL passes through harmlessly. By consuming avenanthramides, you essentially armor your LDL particles. A 2019 study published in the Journal of Nutrition found that eating 1 cup of cooked oats daily for 4 weeks reduced oxidized LDL by 18%. My patient wasn't eating any oats, no barley, no millet. His inflammation was raging, his LDL was oxidizing, and his arteries were paying the price. Third, and this is the one most people miss, ancient grains improve nitric oxide production. Nitric oxide relaxes and widens blood vessels. It's your body's natural vasodilator. When your endothelium is damaged, nitric oxide production drops and your vessels stiffen. That's why you see blood pressure creep up with age. Ancient grains like quinoa and buckwheat contain high levels of arginine, an amino acid that your body uses to produce nitric oxide. And they're also rich in magnesium, which helps nitric oxide synthase function optimally. In a study from the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, hypertensive patients who swapped white rice for quinoa for 8 weeks saw their systolic blood pressure drop by an average of 8 millimeters of mercury. That's a reduction comparable to some medications. So when I told my patient he needed to start eating grains again, he looked at me like I was crazy. But Dr. Chen, won't that spike my blood sugar? Won't that make me gain weight? I explained the difference between modern refined grains and ancient whole grains. Refined grains are stripped of fiber and nutrients. They spike glucose and insulin. Ancient grains, on the other hand, have a low glycemic index because the fiber slows digestion. Quinoa has a glycemic index of 53. That's lower than an apple. Barley is even lower at 28. And they're nutrient dense, so they satiate you. He agreed to try. I gave him a simple protocol. Replace at least 2 meals a day with a serving of an ancient grain. Breakfast: steel-cut oats with cinnamon and blueberries. Lunch: quinoa bowl with vegetables and lean protein. Dinner: barley instead of rice. And I told him to track his daily intake. That's where the app I use comes in. I have my patients log their meals daily because consistency is everything. I've linked the app in the pinned comment. It's a simple tool that helps you stay accountable. But don't get distracted by the technology. The real weapon is the food itself. Within the first month, his blood work started shifting. His LDL dropped from 160 to 120. His triglycerides crashed from 200 to 110. His high sensitivity CRP went from 3.8 to 1.4. But the real test was the repeat calcium scan at 6 months. When he called me with the results, his voice was shaking. "Dr. Chen, the radiologist said he must have made a mistake. My score went from 340 down to 130. He said plaque regression is unheard of." And that's the beauty of functional nutrition. Plaque regression is not unheard of, it's just not taught in medical school. There are numerous studies showing that aggressive lifestyle changes can reverse atherosclerosis. The Lifestyle Heart trial by Dr. Dean Ornish in the 1990s showed that a plant-based diet combined with stress reduction could reduce coronary artery blockages by an average of 4% in 1 year. My patient did better because he was diligent and because ancient grains are uniquely powerful. Now I want to address the elephant in the room. Many people have been told that grains are bad. The gluten-free movement, the keto craze, the paleo diet, all demonize grains. And yes, if you have celiac disease or a true gluten sensitivity, you need to avoid wheat, barley, and rye. But my patient didn't have that, and the vast majority of people don't. The problem is that we've been eating the wrong grains: refined, bleached, stripped of life. Ancient grains are completely different. They're the original form that humans evolved eating for millennia. Our bodies recognize them. Our microbiome thrives on them. One of my favorite ancient grains is teff. It's a tiny grain from Ethiopia, rich in resistant starch, which feeds beneficial gut bacteria even more than regular fiber. A study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry found that teff consumption increased butyrate production by 30% in 2 weeks, and it's naturally gluten-free. Another is sorghum, which has one of the highest antioxidant levels of any grain. Sorghum polyphenols have been shown to inhibit the formation of advanced glycation end products, which are toxic compounds that stiffen arteries and accelerate aging. In animal studies, sorghum consumption reduced aortic plaque by 40%. But you don't need to become a grain expert. Start with what's accessible. Oats and barley are the superstars. Here's a simple tip. Buy whole oat groats or steel-cut oats, not instant. Instant oats have a higher glycemic index because they're processed into smaller pieces. Whole groats take longer to digest, keeping your blood sugar stable. Barley is even better. It has the highest beta-glucan content of any grain. A half cup of cooked barley provides 3.5 grams of beta-glucan, enough to lower cholesterol significantly with consistent use. Another practical tip: combine grains with a source of fat. When you eat beta-glucan, it forms a gel in your gut that binds to bile acids. Your liver then pulls cholesterol from your blood to make more bile acids. That's how it lowers LDL. Adding a teaspoon of olive oil or a handful of almonds to your oatmeal enhances this effect because the fat helps to mobilize bile. So don't eat them dry. And always cook them properly. Soaking overnight can reduce phytic acid, which some worry about. But for most people, proper cooking is sufficient. Now, I want to tell you about another patient, a 67-year-old woman who came to me with a calcium score of 400. She was on 2 blood pressure medications, a statin and metformin for prediabetes. She was terrified of dying like her father, heart attack at 58. I put her on a similar grain protocol, but I also addressed her biggest obstacle: taste. She hated bland oatmeal. So I taught her to make savory oatmeal with herbs, garlic, and a poached egg. She fell in love with it. 6 months later, her calcium score had dropped to 290. Her blood pressure normalized without medication. Her fasting glucose went from 110 to 86. She walked around telling everyone, "I reversed 27 years of arterial damage in 6 months with breakfast." That's the power of ancient grains. I should also mention that you can't just add grains and ignore everything else. If you're still eating processed foods, trans fats, and excess sugar, the grains won't work miracles. But they work synergistically with a healthy lifestyle. The anti-inflammatory effect amplifies when you combine grains with vegetables, healthy fats, and lean protein. And exercise boosts nitric oxide, so the combination of grains and movement is especially potent. Let me answer the most common objection I hear. But grains make me bloated. That's usually because your gut microbiome isn't used to processing fiber. Start with small amounts, a quarter cup cooked, and gradually increase over 2 weeks. Drink plenty of water. The bloating will subside as your bacteria adapt. If you have IBS or SIBO, you may need to choose lower fermentation grains like white rice or oats. But still, whole oats are generally well tolerated. For those with severe sensitivities, I recommend starting with quinoa, which is low in fermentable fibers. Another objection: I can't eat grains because of blood sugar. As I said, ancient grains have a low glycemic index. But if you have diabetes, combine them with protein and fat and avoid eating them alone. A meal of oatmeal with nuts and berries causes a much smaller blood sugar spike than oatmeal alone. Also, eat them earlier in the day. Your insulin sensitivity is highest in the morning, so a breakfast of porridge is ideal. My diabetic patients often see their morning blood sugar drop by 15 points after 2 weeks of swapping their usual cereal or toast for steel-cut oats. Now let me deepen this. There's emerging research on grain bioactive compounds beyond fiber. Whole grains contain alkyl resorcinols, which are phenolic compounds that stimulate the production of phase 2 detoxification enzymes in the liver. These enzymes help clear environmental toxins that contribute to arterial inflammation. And they contain spermidine, a polyamine that induces autophagy, your body's cellular cleanup process. Autophagy slows with age, but spermidine from grains like wheat germ has been shown to extend lifespan in animal models and reduce cardiovascular mortality in humans. A paper in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that high spermidine intake was associated with a 40% reduction in heart failure risk. So when I say ancient grains reversed my patients' blocked arteries, I'm not exaggerating. The mechanism is multifaceted. And the best part is that this is accessible, affordable, and sustainable. A bag of oats costs $1. A box of statins costs hundreds. And while medication has its place, why not start with food? My 52-year-old patient is now 53. He's off all medications except a low-dose aspirin. He runs 5 miles every Sunday. His last echocardiogram showed normal wall motion, no signs of ischemia. He told me recently, I used to think I was eating healthy. Now I know what healthy really means. His story is not unique in my practice. I've seen dozens of people reverse arterial disease with this approach, and I want you to have the same chance. If you're watching this and you're worried about your heart or your parents' heart, start with these 3 steps. 1, eliminate refined grains and sugars. No white bread, pasta, pastries. 2, replace them with whole ancient grains, oat groats, barley, quinoa, buckwheat, amaranth, millet, teff, sorghum. Aim for at least 2 servings a day. 3, track your intake and your progress. The app I mentioned can help you log your meals and monitor changes in biomarkers like blood pressure, cholesterol, and inflammation. It's a free tool, and I've put the link in the pinned comment. I want to leave you with this thought. We've been told that heart disease is inevitable with age, that once your arteries are blocked, there's no going back. That's a lie. The human body is incredibly resilient. It wants to heal. You just have to give it the right materials. Ancient grains are one of those materials. They've been here for thousands of years. They've kept our ancestors alive, and they can keep you alive too. Thank you for watching. If this video helped you, subscribe to the channel. I share new science-backed nutrition insights every week. And don't forget to check the pinned comment for that free tracking tool. Stay healthy, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.